Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. This is the match that everyone wanted when the draw came out and the groups came out for the ATP Tour Finals. It's Novak Djokovic versus Carlos Alcaraz, number one versus number two, and we're going to get a fifth edition of this extremely exciting rivalry and matchup. I can't wait to get into it. Before we do that, remember to that like button, do subscribe if you're new, and do the rating or review if you're listening on a podcast platform. Okay, this is what we're going to do now. I'm going to try and keep this as clean as possible in terms of analysis. So we are going to talk about their matches so far that they've played in their round robin matches and how they've looked as well, form wise. Then I'm going to briefly touch upon the head to head. They've only played once on hard court, which was a Cincinnati match outdoors relatively recently, with Djokovic winning 5-7, 7-6, 7-6. So extremely tight match. The other matches were on grass and clay, and I don't think they have as much weight, in honesty. And even the Cincinnati match, there was barely anything in it. So it's there's not really a huge amount to go on in terms of who's going to win this. It's more going to be down to who's looked the best, I think, form wise going into the matchup. And Djokovic historically is an incredible player on indoor hardcourt and is arguably the best indoor player ever. Um, in all honesty, because he's just very, very good. Especially if you were to win this tournament, I think it's undeniable because he's joined on 6 ATP Tour Finals with Roger Federer currently. Let's get into their route to this stage then very quickly. So Alcaraz beat Zverev in 3 sets. Sorry, lost to Zverev in 3 sets. Then beat Rublev, Medvedev both in straight sets. And the Medvedev match today looked very good. Zverev is a very big server, and Alcaraz struggled just to adapt to the surface. He said after that he felt the courts were really, really quick. Felt mental fatigue as well. Zverev played a really good match. A lot of unreturnables, a lot of aces. Stepped forward as well. Was aggressive with the forehand and the backhand as well. Aggressive with the net. And I do think the indoor hard courts really do suit his game, especially the faster ones. And he looked really, really good, really impressive. But it was a tight match. Alcaraz is struggling with rhythm in his ground strokes, especially the forehand. A lot of shanks, a lot of mistimed ones going long, going into the net, going wide. Looked very, very rushed. So what I will say is that in that matchup, in that match, sorry, even Alcaraz definitely not his best, and just looked a little bit like a duck out of water, in all honesty. If that's even the right phrase, but yeah, he did not look great, in all honesty, and it was a shame because it's his first ever ATP Tour Finals matchup, and it obviously wasn't to be in the sense that he just wasn't meant to win it, which is fine, but. Then he played against Rublev and Medvedev, and I was a bit worried because the red flags about saying the course too quick, and I was thinking, oh no, he's not going to be able to. Well, in my opinion, anyway, he's not going to be able to adapt quick enough to really trouble these guys. Rublev, he'd never played before. Medvedev, of course, he's lost at the US Open recently to him as well, and the courts really suit Medvedev's game. But no, he came out on top nicely. And the biggest thing for me in these matches and how he's looked is the last 2 matches is that he's adapted extremely quickly to how the courts are playing, which is fantastic. The forehand is looking a lot more reliable. It's a big weapon on these courts. He should be hitting a lot of winners off that side, in honesty. He's also, I think, managed to defend really well. And again, he's adapted because defensively, in both wings, especially the backhand side, I've been really impressed with how he's defended that corner. And the serve, which is arguably the weakest serve of the field, has been firing nicely. So overall, I would say, all positive, I think, for Alcaraz in terms of where he was against Zverev to now. He's made some big strides. So he goes into this as confident as I think he could be, in honesty. On paper, of course, Djokovic still the favourite, no doubt, given the surface, given historically how good he is at this tournament as well. Djokovic, well, he beat Runa in the first match, which is a really good win, considering Runa, of course, causes him a lot of problems, but won in 3 sets. Then lost to Sinner in 3 sets. Sinner played some inspired tennis. Djokovic still the level high there, but just couldn't get over the line. Lost in the final set tiebreaker. When is the last time we said that? And then Djokovic beat Hurkacz in a must-win match, beating him in 3 sets. And interestingly, has played 3 sets in all 3 of his matches. Will that play a toll? In the semi-final? No. In all honesty, I don't think it will. They've had a day's rest in between. He's an extremely well-conditioned athlete. I don't think it'll be a factor. The head-to-head, of course, is, as I discussed, I don't think there's really much to get into, in all honesty, here. We've seen it play out 4 times, but it could play out very differently in these conditions. They're very different to any of these matches. The closest, as I said, was Cincinnati, but it was just such a tight match. So tough to really say whether that has any real bearing. So tactically and technically, how does this one play out? Well, there's a few things I think we need to bear in mind. I'm going to try and keep this as streamlined as possible, but with as much information and analysis given within that streamlined version. And what I'm going to do is supplement it with how they've looked form wise. I think that's more important than talking about the head to head, how they've looked in the last few matches on the specific surface against specific opponents. Alcaraz needs to serve well, in honesty, yeah? And that's, I think, a must when you play against Djokovic on any surface, but especially on these indoor hard courts. These courts are so conducive and they're so rewarding for players who serve not necessarily just big, but mainly hit their spots. And yeah, serve big when needed as well, especially someone as good a returner as Djokovic, the best returner ever. Uh, you know, Even he's been struggling at times on these courts because they're just so quick. And Alcaraz has got a little bit of not necessarily underpowered, sir, but I would say it's maybe not as efficient as some of the others on tour or even in this group of players. So he needs to be at the top of his game on his serve to make sure that he's not to make sure that he's not under pressure constantly by Djokovic in the return games or consistently under pressure. And then what that will mean as well, if he's under pressure, is he's not able to then be aggressive with that first strike after serve. And we know how important for him that serve forehand combo is in his service games. And if he wants to serve and volley, for example, then again, he needs to hit his spots because if he doesn't, he will be a sitting duck of the net. So that's really, really important. Also, for Djokovic, returning wise, the kick serve that, everyone always talks about, kick serve into the Djokovic backhand is weakest return. And yeah, it is. And at times he still doesn't look super comfortable. He struggles to generate a lot of aggression off that serve, off that return, sorry, even. On the surface, it's not going to be as potent, of course. And Alcaraz, I think, needs to make sure that he has variation with his serve because one thing that I saw against Medvedev, even though he won 20 out of 25 net points, a couple of times he did get past trying to serve and volley at the juice side, being very predictable going out wide. And Medvedev found a great angle cross court. Now, Djokovic isn't going to be standing as far back. He won't be. So Alcaraz won't be as inclined to come forward to serve and volley as he did against Medvedev. But what he might do is serve +1, then volley, for example. Or, at some point he will look to come forward when he can. He's not going to stop coming forward because it's Djokovic. But he won't come forward as frequently as a tactic to serve and volley. The other thing to look out for is going to be Djokovic's serve and Alcaraz's return because Alcaraz's return in the set against Zverev, he was struggling. But against Rublev and Medvedev, I was definitely more impressed with how it's looked. And he needs to be making a lot of returns against Djokovic, especially on the second serve. He needs to be aggressive on those second serve returns and try and really turn the table on those. Both these players are very good on second serve points, generally speaking, because they're so good at being able to, just generate such quality inconsistency from the baseline, which is, what really sets them apart, I would say, in honesty. So those points could be really crucial, those second serve points on both players' serves, in honesty, who can win that battle. But the biggest thing is going to be that ad court exchange. And, Yannick Sinner, interestingly, went really big into the Djokovic backhand and in those ad court exchanges. And normally you wouldn't think that anyone would do that because Djokovic's backhand, generally speaking, is the best, I would say, of all time. But on these quicker indoor hard courts and how Sinner was able to strike the ball, especially on his backhand side as well, he rushed Djokovic. It's uncomfortable at times. and he wasn't maybe defending that side as well as as well as he's normally able to against other opponents. And it just showed that okay, there's a slight, very small crack of chink in his armor on that backhand side defensively, which is interesting because not many players are able to access that. Most players will actually go into the Djokovic forehand when they're being aggressive and expect an error from that side or a shorter ball to then really finish off the point. But Djokovic's forehand has been monster at times, in honesty. So it'll be interesting to see. Okay, how does a forehand exchange play out? In that juice court, because I have a feeling Djokovic is going to enjoy some success in that. I think Alcaraz is going to have to be a little bit creative. I don't think he's going to be able to just out hit Djokovic forehand to forehand. I think he's going to have to be a bit creative with. Okay, I might hit a slightly heavier topspin forehand with more angle, and then maybe go flatter and deeper with a forehand as well. And then okay, I might hit more of a buggy whip forehand as well, and everything kind of in between as well. And he's normally quite good at having that variation, but he'll need that against Djokovic because if it's quite one paced, then Djokovic will just let loose on the forehand, and he's been doing that all week, and it's very destructive. The other thing he's going to have to look out for is if Djokovic goes line first and goes big, that even though he's been defending the backhand side well, that could be an issue because it could open him up to most likely Alcaraz is then going to go backhand cross. That opens him up to the backhand line, which Djokovic, I mean, it's a vintage Djokovic shot, right? And it's one that no one else on tour can pull off any better, I would say. It's just such a phenomenal shot. But Alcaraz, yeah, I think it'll be intriguing to see how that ad court exchange plays out because the backhand's been pretty solid from Alcaraz. The into forehand as well. How does he utilize that? Is he going to go as big in that ad court exchange as Sinner did? Probably not. I think he'll probably try and get out of that exchange by going line. But then he's got to be careful because one thing that Djokovic does really well defensively on the forehand side, and to be fair, Alcaraz can do it as well. But actually, I would say the similarity is between Djokovic and Sinner. On the run, they're able to, on the stretch on that forehand side, they're able to generate this really impressive forehand with a bit more height over the net, um, but a really good angle and depth cross court to get them back to neutral. And at times, it can even end up being an aggressive shot because of how well they've timed it, how well they've managed to set themselves in terms of early preparation. And that's Djokovic and Sinner. Alcaraz doesn't have that as much, in honesty, on that forehand side. So I'm interested to see how he copes with that against Djokovic. And Djokovic is going big cross court with the forehand. And then in the backhand to backhand, Djokovic is always going to be the favorite in that. But Alcaraz needs to, if he goes line, then be aggressive so that Djokovic is not able to maybe generate and be as comfortable hitting that defensive forehand and maybe have him on the stretch going low. I think the backhand slice is going to be really crucial for Alcaraz as well to disrupt rhythm. I think he's utilized it really well against Medvedev and Rublev with success. He won't have as much success against Djokovic, but I think it will help as a change of pace. And then at the net, in and around the net, both players are going to have those cat and mouse points as we've seen in prior matches as well. And it'll just be who comes out on top. And I do really think this all boils down to a couple of things. I think Djokovic is definitely the favorite. I think the courts suit him more, no doubt. It suits his style of play more. So that's one factor. And then the second factor is just going to be who plays the bigger points better, who's going to be more clinical, who's going to be able to execute their game plan better. That's really what these types of matchups come down to because there's not much between the two, in honesty, in terms of level. The courts do make a difference, no doubt, but it's going to be who's able to play better on the day, and who's able to execute their game and also adapt during the match, if needed, to then get the victory. Let's see who it is, but I'm going to go in terms of my prediction for Novak Djokovic. If Alcaraz was to win in straight sets, I'd be very surprised. In 3 sets, I could potentially see it, but I see Djokovic winning, and I think it'll be in 3 sets. Another very competitive match, and I think he'll make his way into the final. But let's see. Let's see. Maybe Alcaraz causes, which in my book would be an upset. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Thank you very much, guys. Stay safe and well. We'll see you in the next video.